4:30, so we'll go ahead and, or it's 5:30.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and get started with the city council study session for Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. We have one item on the agenda, which is a discussion regarding status of the FYE 2026 Capital Improvements Program budget and preparation of the FYE 2027 Capital Improvements Program budget. And just a note that the attachment, the document is not going to be on the video, technical difficulty, but it is attached to this on the agenda item on the city website for anybody that wants to look at it. So we have city staff here to talk about, to lead the discussion.
All right, so thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Jacob Huckabee. I'm a budget analyst in the Finance Department. I'm here at the table with our budget manager, Kim Kaufman. And as you said, we're going to be talking about the FYE fiscal year ending 2027 budget, starting off the process officially for this fiscal year. The first step that we're going to go through in this presentation is just going to be a brief review of the FYE 26 budget, what was in that, how that looked at the time of adoption, and then going over some preparation for the FYE 27 budget, which is adopted in the single year of this upcoming fiscal year process, as well as looking at the 2028 to 2021 capital improvements plan.
I want to interrupt. I'm sorry. Before we get started, I want to kind of highlight the first glance at our new cover for the budget book and the fiscal year ending 2025 annual finance report, because this is Anthony's final vision for our cover. And as you probably know, we have many, many years of wonderful themes and explanations on the inside cover. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that.
Absolutely.
This year's vision is a tour of Jenkins, all the projects on Jenkins Avenue. So just wanted to touch on that. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Definitely want to highlight that. They did a great job. Anthony did a great job with the theme. And we've got a lot of help from the print shop and communications for some nice pictures. So they did a great job on that as always. Moving on to the first slide on your packet. It's going to be just an overview of some of the dates that are important to the capital process within the budget process. So we have today's date, November 18th. Next meeting is going to be on March 3rd. So we're going to have all those new project requests in. We're going to crunch some numbers and kind of look at where we're at. How do we want the preliminary budget to look as we get that printed out and get it ready for adoption. And then on May 5th, we'll do a final review of the preliminary budget before it goes to adoption in June. So next, we have just an overview of what is a capital project. So these projects are going to be projects that are genuinely more than $100,000, but that's not a hard floor. It can be more or less. They're going to be the maintenance, replacement, or expansion of the relatively fixed or permanent assets that we have that are going to have a lifespan of usually more than 5 years. These are going to be our bridges, our roads, the buildings. They can be art installations contributed to those buildings. So there's really a pretty wide variety of what these projects can be. And the notable thing with these projects is that they're going to be often more than one fiscal year to complete. So as you appropriate in one fiscal year, those projects budgets are going to roll forward each year. And so you don't have to reappropriate those funds unless new funds are needed in the following years.
And council, just a note on that topic. Sometimes some of those capital projects are a big mouthful to bite off. And the beauty of your ability to appropriate dollars for phases like right-of-way acquisition. In the next budget, it may be all the design and engineering, and in the third year, it may be the actual construction. So we try to use just kind of the real timeline to our advantage to make it fit within resources available.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can do the design, the land acquisition, any of the construction, utility relocations. All those are contained in that project throughout the lifespan of that project as well. So moving on to both the funding sources and the ideas for these projects, where they come from. So when we start this process, we usually look at the long-range master plans that are reviewed by council and citizens. These are going to include recently like the AIM plan with the land use, transportation, parks master plan, wastewater, water, stormwater. All these plans are going to give us ideas of where we want to look for what projects do we want to do, when do we want to do them, things like that. And those priorities are going to be set by council in the short and long range in these budget documents. So in the short range, you're gonna be adopting the 1-year budget. So for this fiscal year, FY '27, and then we'll include in the budget documents, the plan to go from 28 to 31, usually a 5-year plan, where we include those project schedules and those projections to see where we're gonna be, to follow along those master plans as well. So when it comes to the emergencies that might pop up throughout the fiscal year, this is not the only time that council can appropriate fund balance into these projects. If a high need or an emergency arises, council always has the ability to appropriate fund balance or transfer from projects into other projects that are emerging as a higher need as need be in any council meeting. So this is not like a set in stone process at any time. This can always be amended. And then when looking at the sources for the funding for these projects, it's really quite a wide variety. We have general obligation bonds. We have the various dedicated sales taxes with the capital sales tax. It's a 0.7% sales tax. We have the 0.5% Norman's forward sales tax, public safety sales tax, the various tax increment financing districts. We have our enterprise utility revenues, various grants, room tax fund. There's really quite a few different ways that we look at funding these projects, and it's all in the budget document as well to see.
I got a question for you.
Yes, Councilmember Bruce.
So in the sub-plans or the long-range master plans and sub-plans beneath those, the priority of those capital projects are in those sub-plans?
Yeah, I would assume so, yeah. They're usually, like, sometimes things might pop up throughout the budget year. If something pops up, we could definitely add that into those plans. But those just give us the ideas of when we want to do the projects, if that makes sense.
So in those sub-plans, the methodology for assessing the priority, is it consistent, or is it, everyone has their own methodology in how they?
Typically, in Public Works and our utilities folks are the lion's share of that activity. There may be trigger points based on remaining capacity in certain infrastructure that triggers the next element of that master plan, but Mr. Sturts might be able to share some inside baseball on how that really works.
Each plan really kind of has a different way that they would assess those projects, but we do it evenly across all those projects. So, you know, there's a different rating system that we use for stormwater than we do for items in the transportation plan, because they just really wouldn't rank up against each other on a one-on-one. But we do always want to make sure that whatever we do is repeatable and consistent. So if we bring a new project in, we're using the exact same scoring, and we're going to wind up putting it in the exact same place. Then if you go to some of our other programs, like the sidewalk programs, we have a spreadsheet. If somebody calls in with an area that needs to be looked at, we can take that. We can use that scoring. It gives us an instant score, puts it in the spreadsheet. So it depends on the size of the program that we're dealing with as to exactly how we do it. But yeah, we do have different rating criteria for different types of projects.
So I'm just
I would
trying,
think of it, if I may, I would think of it as the 1-year capital budget is sort of the implementation of those long-range plans that council has adopted. So for example, I would think of the park master plan. As part of the AIM process, you just updated the park master plan that talked about these are the parks that you're gonna do over the next 5 or 10 years. In this year, there may be 1 or 2 or 3 of those parks that were envisioned in that long-range park plan implemented in this year's budget and then planned for in the next 3 or 4 years in the capital plan. So I would think of it as those long-range plans are an input into the capital budget and the capital plan, and the capital plan is an implementation document for those long-range plans. Did that confuse things for you?
I'm sure it's going to become clear, but I'm looking at how you assess for ranking of recommended projects, and then when it gets up to the council, how that council makes a determination not only within that category, but all the other categories. So I said, well, okay, we have 5 or 6 different categories at the macro level. You know, we've got, okay, is this project more important than this over here? You know what I mean? How's that done? I don't know right now.
It's really your call.
Well, and Mr. Francisco, also you ponder, you'll see in the presentation, there are multiple funding sources that feed the capital budget, and some of them are very master plan specific. So we'll have water money that we can only use on water projects, and sewer money you can only use on sewer projects. Where you get your latitude is general fund, capital, dollars. So like if there's a streets bond, it's already scheduled out when the voters approved it. Our bridge bonds, already all scheduled out how the voters approved it. Not a lot of wiggle room or discretion there. Streets projects, you can kind of reprioritize. Mr. Sturts and his team will be happy to show you like the letter grade of that particular street we're recommending, and you can see how it lines up with all the other letter grades of our streets in terms of their useful life or remaining useful life. So happy to share with you that ranking criteria, but when you see the funding sources line up against the projects, it does kind of limit your discretion, and you've got wiggle room in the water fund, but not wiggle room between the funds.
I agree 100%. Understand that based upon colors of money in my past. So, and then, okay, where there's playroom, where you're on the playing field, then there's a decision, how do we do this logically related to selection of the capital project to execute? And so I'm just trying to identify that framework. I haven't quite yet, but sure it's there.
Staff gives that recommendation based on criteria. And then we as council, though, can say we agree with staff's list of projects, or we can say, well, in Ward 3, you might think that there's a different project that your residents have told you is more, you've heard more feedback on maybe, and you want to move that one up to the top of the list. And that's something you could propose, or each of us could as well. And when there is extra money in there, or there's a surplus, then it's easier too, because then we can say, well, I also want to do this sidewalk project, or I want to do this other project. Because
That'd be wonderful in the surplus, but
yeah,
the other side of it, I'm looking at, if I was a division chief, I'm competing against this division chief for the general funds for the projects I want executed. And so there's a methodology eventually that has to be developed at this level, saying, okay, how are we gonna do this? Is
Yeah.
it based on risk analysis or something else?
Well, you'll
I don't
see
know.
on an upcoming slide that we actually have guidelines as to how we spend. Most of the capital projects take place in the capital fund, and we have guidelines as to how those funds are spent. It doesn't happen very often that we can add new capital projects because we don't have the funding for that. Most of our capital sales tax is spent on capital outlay replacement or finishing existing projects that are taking years to complete. So you don't have a lot of wiggle room or selection, but where you do, like mayor and city manager said, it'll fall into categories that will help make those decisions.
Sounds good.
somebody else, okay. All right.
Okay, so the next slide kind of breaks down where those special purpose revenues go into and kind of ties in what the purpose of those revenues are. For example, you have the public safety sales tax fund. That's where all those PSST sales tax revenues are going to go. And those PSST based projects and operating funds are going to be expended, as well as the community development block grant fund, the special grants fund, where all those special revenues, most recently like the ARPA funds went into. You have the room tax fund, where all those room taxes go from the motel hotel tax. You have the public transportation and parking fund, capital fund. That's going to be the largest in the document. It's broken up into two kind of two portions, with the pay-as-you-go sales tax funded projects, as well as the general obligation bond funded projects. The Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund, the Parkland Development Fund, University North Park Tax Increment Finance District Fund, the Center City Tax Increment Finance District Fund, and the Arterial Road Recruitment Fund. And then we also have the enterprise funds included in the budget as well. Those are all related to utilities. Those are included in the CIP document, but we don't really discuss them in these meetings, as they have their own meeting that I believe is in May. So you'll get a chance to go over those funds in their entirety and talk about the projects and where those funds are at.
And just, would you remind us, the new development excise tax fund, is that tax, how is it raised, if it were to be raised?
There are excise taxes charged at the time of building permit issuances that can, again, only be used for the expansion or improvement of the sewer system. It's specifically, there is a law that says you can only use it that way. And that's the difference between, you know, the kind of fungible funds that the city manager is talking about in the capital fund and those that are set aside by ordinance for a specific purpose.
Does that one require a vote of the people?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So moving on into the actual funds themselves, first up, we have the capital fund. And we always like to start with this slide, is the status of the capital fund. It's gonna highlight the line item in the fund summaries that we show as the projected available for new projects each year. This is gonna be related to the sales tax that we have available for new projects. And we have a slide in the next one, kind of going into more detail about this one. But this is just really the figure that we use to benchmark how much do we have currently appropriated in projects in the capital fund. This is something that we can kind of control as we go when it comes to how much we spend each year on these projects and the timing of this. But this is just kind of our way to look at how much do we have, do we need to slow it down in this upcoming year? Just a really good way for us to look at it.
And we obviously don't have negative $12 million to
Right.
spend or whatever.
Right, exactly.
So if you just kind of explain how that works, we're not deficit spending.
Right.
We have projects that are underway that,
Yeah, absolutely.
financed.
On the next slide, we actually included a little snippet. We do get a lot of questions about this one. This is gonna be a little snippet from our fund summary in the CIP budget. We kind of shrunk it down to highlight some of the key points that go into this factor. I tried to break it down so each column in here is gonna be a fiscal year. And as it goes through each fiscal year, the previous fiscal years are gonna be labeled as an actual, which is what was actually spent. It's an audited figure to look back and what was spent on the projects, how much revenue is actually put into this fund. And then we have the current fiscal year where we estimate how much we're gonna get, estimate how much we're gonna spend, and then the preliminary and adopted budget going forward where we project it and adopt it, and then projections going forward. So the top little group there is gonna be where all the revenue is located. It's in green on your slides. This is gonna be where we record all the sales tax revenue in the capital fund, as well as in the highlight there, all the bond proceeds. So whenever we go and we issue these bonds, we're gonna record those as we get them. Looking down into the expenditure side, we have quite a few more lines in that, but I shrunk it down to just the capital projects to show the other kind of key component and where this number comes from, which is if you look at the FYE 25 estimated column, you can see that's a pretty large number there of $24 million. This is where we go into our projections and we assume that all those projects are going to be spent down to zero, which is something that never really happens. But for our projections, this is something that we just take into account for budget purposes.
So that prevents us from spending the same dollar twice.
Exactly. And then in between there is where we have our ending fund balance, which usually is pretty high. You can see in 24 actuals, 81 million, 30 million in 25, 57 million. This is going to be because we have all of those bond proceeds sitting in the fund balance. And so below that in the blue, we don't want to sit there and assume that we have $30 million. And so we hold all those bond proceeds in reserve for the bond projects that we haven't spent yet. And so for our 2019 transportation bond, we might issue 26 million, but only going to spend 6 million. So we hold the remaining 20 million in reserve and subtract that from fund balance, which gets us to that bottom number, which is the available to hold out all those bond projects for just the sales tax portion that we have. And
So, and Mr. Francisco, if you can describe, for instance, the voters approved $50 million in bridge bond efforts for 18 bridges to be rebuilt or rehabilitated. And can you describe generically how frequently we will issue chunks of that 50 million voter approval?
Yeah, and it's a very important distinction to make. When we get to those slides, you'll see, but what the voters approve is authorization to issue bonds. We don't authorize, or we don't issue all the bonds that the voters have authorized unless we believe that the projects can move along that quickly. So for example, the bridge projects, we know that they cannot be. We can't physically do $50 million worth of bridge projects in 1 year, or 2 or 3 years. We plan that over 10 years, so we issue 2 or 3 tranches, is the word, of debt over, first one might be a first year, and then 3 years later, we issue another tranche. 4 years after that, we issue the final tranche. So that $50 million will be spent out over time, but even of that first, let's say 20 million that we issued, it is going to be spent out over the next 3 or 4 years. So now we have $20 million sitting in the bank waiting for it to get spent as the projects go forward. And that's what Jacob is saying is being held in reserve. So even though we issued $20 million, we only spent $5 million this year, there's $15 million that is in reserve because we know that it can only be used for that voter-approved purchase. But there's money sitting in the bank. It's in the fund balance, okay? And that's the important distinction that we're trying to make, so that you don't think that we have $30 million sitting in the fund balance available for you to appropriate for anything that you might want to. You don't. You can only use that money for the voter-approved project. The voter-approved projects can only move forward at, I don't want to say snail's pace, but an acceptable pace for the contractors and for our engineers to get the projects designed and out the door.
Councilor Grant?
This is more refreshing my memory. I remember when we did the bridge bond, we also had a caveat that some of that money could be spent on emergency bridge repairs. What does that mean if we end up having to do an unforeseen one and we might have a bridge that was in the list of bridges but isn't finished?
Okay, so first off, if the voters approve $50 million worth of bonds, the voters can approve up to 30% of that 50 million to be used for contingency or for cost overruns and that sort of thing. And actually, this was one of the first times that Norman had done that. What I just told you, that authorization is in the statutes and in the Constitution, but our ordinances had always, we had always approved 80% of what we were going to do and proposed that to the voters in the ordinance. This time we did have some emergency funds or some contingency funds in that bond project because we knew that there would probably be some bridges that were going to wash out that we didn't anticipate to wash out when we proposed the bonds. So yes, there are some funds available if a bridge washes out that we didn't anticipate, like what happened on Havenbrook or what happened on Imhoff. Council can then appropriate some of those emergency or contingency funds to fix that bridge problem that we have with bond funds that the voters have approved.
Okay, yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Councilor Dixon?
Just to be clear on issuing these tranches on a bond package, if it was passed in 2025, it's a 10-year bond package, pick a number, 10-year deal, 2025, so if a tranche is released in, 8 years, they don't have 10 year, we don't have 10 years from when the tranche was released to pay it back, it's just that,
That's correct. The
that 10
payback
years from
schedule is set.
day one.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, do we have any more questions on?
And I want to, please, I know we have some new council members. I want to make sure that everybody knows that there's no stupid questions. Okay, ask away. Stop it. Let's make sure that you're clear on everything before we leave here today, or after we leave here today. Call me, ask Kim, ask Jacob questions. We'll answer them for you.
Okay, so moving on to next slide, we have the overall guidelines for how we like to allocate this new sales tax revenue. These are kind of historically what we look to when we start looking at how much we want to do capital outlay. We usually go around 27%, street maintenance 20%, so on and so forth. These are not going to be concrete guidelines. These can change. You'll see on the next slide kind of how it shakes out in reality. But this is just our starting point of how much do we want to look at each year when it comes to these specific categories. And recently we've added information technology. That's one of the newer ones that we've added to tackle some of the critical IT hardware and software upgrades that we just want to make sure that we kind of bake it into the budget, that we have this money available for these critical needs in IT, just for example.
And this chart applies to the capital fund only.
Yes. And
This is where we're trying to get to what Councilmember Bruce was talking about. And again, these are categories, these are guidelines, it's flexible, but within these guidelines, we try to stay within, we're trying to spend about 27% on capital outlay things. And again, there's a lot of things that we're funding, fleet replacements and that sort of thing within that capital outlay piece of the pie. But we're trying to follow these guidelines the council sets and/or that council can change. As Jacob said, that 5% for IT was just a change that was made a year or two ago, because that priority moved up on council's priority list. You know, we were having to spend a lot of money on computer replacement stuff every year. Those can be some very high dollar projects. And so we set aside that 5% piece of the capital sales tax for that newly high priority.
Mostly because nobody wants to compete against him when he shares a need in the world of IT, because we are all so reliant on that IT infrastructure, and we all recognize the threat from outside actors, so.
Councilmember Brackey?
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think it was the OML conference, we were hearing about Durant getting attacked and how they're having to rebuild their database and sending people out to the cemetery to go record data off the gravestones.
Lost all their files, everything.
Yeah, it was a ransom. So anyways, the message from that session was invest in IT.
Yes.
So on the next slide, you'll see just from the FY '26 budget, where all those capital sales tax allocations actually went in the budget. You'll see we had $17.5 million in revenue, and we only expended in the budget or appropriated $14.7 million. You'll see in that pie chart, everything looks a little bit smaller than what it was in the guidelines, with capital outlay only at 20%, street maintenance only at 15%. And those differences were all made up in that portion that's added for the unappropriated. And that was done mainly to tackle what we talked about earlier on the available for new projects, just kind of slowing down, allowing that fund to catch up with the revenue and try to get that number back up a little bit more positive as we go and trend in the right direction in the capital fund.
And the street maintenance portion of the pie, that's includes the street maintenance bond?
No, this is only.
That's in
for-
addition to.
This is in addition to, this is only sales tax related. The bonds are separate from this pie chart.
Okay, and then the other project and debt service says 25%. How much of that is just the debt service, do you think?
That's a good question.
The two of them make that big fat book and the little skinny book, so they live in it.
Just because we, do a lot of bond programs, we have a lot of debt finance stuff, so it
It looks
adds
like
up to a lot.
for 26, it looks like it's like 8, 9, it's about 12 million in debt service. And that's debt service on the different bonds that we're paying on currently, GO bonds.
Yeah. So it is nice to be able to bond finance maintenance and other programs, but it does have a pretty steep cost too, when you're talking about millions of dollars in financing, debt
And-
financing.
What we're able to spend of the new sales tax or the new capital sales tax revenue is also tempered by our ability to complete these projects. So we have a certain number of staff and we have a certain amount of materials and a certain number of days in every year, and we can only accomplish so much. So that's also a factor here.
Thank you.
So on to the next slide, we have just a list of some of the recurring projects that we talked about in the capital fund. You'll see in the left-hand column, those are all the projects that were recurring that were included in last year's capital budget. The various categories: street maintenance, we have street striping, stormwater, the tree program, the IT 5% capital outlay, and all the sidewalk projects as well. And those total just over $12.6 million. On the right-hand column, that's all the projects that the decision was made not to include those in FY '26. Those included alley repair, the ADA compliance project, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation audit adjustment project, the pay-as-you-go sales tax funded bridge maintenance project that is separate from the bridge bond projects, the traffic common project, and a community and neighborhood development and improvement project. And just a little side note on those, all those were included back into the projections for 27 plus. But just as we get all those requests in, as we look at the numbers, as we get the fund summaries closer to those, to the time of the next presentation, we'll take a look at all those requests and I'll bring those to the table and we'll make a decision, or you'll make the decision on what to include and get adopted ultimately.
So, council, you could look at that list and say, well, why do we keep so many projects on the list? We never have enough money to do all those projects. It is important that we maintain an inventory. How many plates in the air are we spinning? Because we never know at what point money will present itself. And it could be a new federal program, it could be ARPA, it could be CARES Act money, it could be a new transportation bond out of the feds. The fact that Norman keeps an inventory of lots of capital projects ready to go, we are pretty darn competitive when those notices of funding availability show up. We can go to our list of projects that we don't have money for yet, find one that fits the funding opportunity and go. A lot of smaller agencies that don't have the caliber or quantity of staff we do in these intense capital areas, they don't have the luxury of being that competitive. So that we're big enough where it serves us well to keep more projects on the books than we have money in the bank to accomplish.
We could, we could, for example, say the reoccurring sidewalk projects for 500,000. We could say we don't want to do that this year, and we wanted to do alley repair and ADA compliance, which are combined at $500,000 instead. So that, back to Councilmember Bruce's point, question, it's where we get to decide what's more important to us, the sidewalk project or alley repair, both important. Which one's the priority this year?
Always your call.
So, yeah, we get to make that decision. So we get the big bucks for.
And those are the kind of decisions that we're trying to gauge in this very meeting tonight.
Yeah,
Oh, just another question there. So
Yeah,
I'm just
Councilmember Bruce.
trying to, so where it says FYE 26 recurrent projects, are these projects where, I guess right, in my mind, they're approved projects. May not have the funding, but they're approved.
And we have the projected funding for them. We budgeted for them. You appropriated money for them.
So the budget's been allocated
Yes,
down to the divisions.
yes.
And they have their own little bank that I got this much money to do this project because it's approved.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next slide, you have an overview of the FYE 21-26 street maintenance bond program. This was a 5-year, $27 million general obligation bond program that the voters approved. You'll see years 1 through 5, the majority of this work is complete with just a few remaining under construction. Just wanted to highlight last year, FY 26 was the final year of this program. So we'll be looking to hopefully get this renewed in the upcoming budget cycle. So something to keep an eye on as we go through this budget process as well.
yeah, that's the program from 2005, renewed every 5 years since.
Yes.
Yeah, it does about has 5 categories for each year. Has been really successful so far.
As that question evolves for council's consideration, what you'll see is we are cognizant that we've got voters in 8 wards, and we've got to spread the love and make sure we have projects identified in each ward. There is something in each of those road maintenance bond questions for every segment of Norman.
Yes.
And then next slide, we have an overview of the 2019 Transportation General Obligation Bond Program. You'll see on the left in that little box, you see the amount that the total authorization was $72 million. To date, we've issued $46 million on these projects, so I anticipate we'll do some more on those in the future. Looking down the timeline, you'll see that a few of these are already complete, relating to Porter Avenue, the intersection with Acres, as well as the streetscape going out from that intersection. There's a few more underway already with Gray Street two-way conversion, traffic management center, and the Jenkins Avenue widening project. You'll see all those little blue locks are gonna kind of show what's locked into with federal funding, what we've been able to supplement those project budgets with, not just bond funds, but those ACOG federal fund grants to get those projects going and to help ensure those future projects can remain funded to get those done on time as well.
Okay, and then maybe a question for Scott, but see James Garner Avenue, Acres to Duffy, 2029, originally 2022. But federal funding and all that stuff, I understand, but, intersection of Gray and James Garner, intersections of Main and James Garner. Will those have to wait for that project, or Gray being done with the Gray Street project and Main being done with a two-way Main Street project?
That's correct. So the Gray Street and James Garner intersection is being done with the Gray
This
Street
project.
project. So instead of having the weird little Y thing that I think just kind of happened over years and eventually got paved, that will actually be a real intersection with the signal. And then when the James Garner project continues, we'll take care of the Main Street at that time. And that will be put together, that will be then constructed with another signalized intersection.
So it would be so we do Main Street two-way, if that happens before James Garner, would that potentially be part of that project?
We could look at that and
Main-
just determine
main-
how we need to,
Okay.
how we would phase that in. We would do whatever would make the most sense for the projects. Initially, we had envisioned that James Garner would be the first project.
Yeah.
So actually, the intersection at Gray would have been done with James Garner.
Yeah.
However, as we saw that the funding was more available for Gray Street, and that also helped us get that in, we reversed that. We put it in with the first street coming in so that we wouldn't come back and tear up a street that we just completed to do it. So we make those changes and we watch carefully where we think we can strategically move and balance. And, you know, we've also done things like the two Lindsay Street projects. We actually flipped those because it worked better with OU and it allowed us to keep those projects moving forward. So we're always kind of adjusting and tweaking the system to get the best benefit we can for the money and to serve the citizens the best that we can every year.
And so far, we're 6 years in, 4 or 5 more years left. Going okay so far.
I would say that we are behind, just to be honest.
Funding,
the main-
outside funding.
The main reason for that is the changes that we saw in 2019 after we did our bond program that changed those scoring categories. The rubric for how we get the money from ACOG. The projects that we picked fit the old one and we were really excited. We're like, these are just checking boxes. But with the new one, we're having to be a little bit more careful. We're having to watch things. We've shifted some projects. That's why James Garner has slipped down the list and some others, Jenkins moved up. Simply because we could find ways that we could utilize funding that was available. We are continually going out, not only for ACOG funding, both the Cedar Lane Road and 36th Avenue Southeast. We keep going out for other funding, federal funds for that. We also keep looking at, Safe Streets
Those are
for
gonna be
All.
hard, I think.
I mean, if we see a grant opportunity, we throw our hat in the ring and see if we can get some of that funding to be able to help us to get our programs back on. I think that the 2019 bond program has also really been hindered by the fact that we've seen about a 60% increase in construction costs since 2019, well, really since like 2021. So it's kind of put us a little bit behind the curve, and that's another reason why we're having to fight really hard to find the best available funding sources so we can make sure to complete the program completely.
It's getting harder and harder to do the big widening projects, like you said, so.
And we're making changes, like on 24th Northeast, we went from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. It's a cost savings, but we also think that it fits.
148, yeah, west.
Yep, so we're finding ways to do more with what we've got, and we also think it fits in with what we've seen in the comprehensive transportation plan that was just updated through AIM.
Councilmember Grant and then Blodgett.
Yeah, so with the James Garner Avenue, Acres to Duffy, just thinking about, we approved a couple weeks ago, I wanna say, staff going out for a grant to potentially put a roundabout at Acres and James Garner.
Yes,
Does that somehow fit into this? The grant was like
Separate.
80-20, right?
that was an 80-20 grant, and we've got that submitted or waiting to submit. It's been submitted. When we get the answer to that, we'll know, and then so we'll be able to move forward on that. But that is totally separate of the 2019 bond program.
Okay.
That'd be part of your just capital program.
Yeah, I was looking at the
If we
last
get the
slide.
grant, it's proposed that the matching money from the city would come from Norman Forward.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was
Thank
just
you.
curious because I didn't see it on the last slide when I was scanning it, so, yeah, I was curious where it fits, thank you.
Councilmember Blodgett.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I don't know and I'm kind of new at this. I'm still back at the projects not included in capital budget for 26. On ADA compliance, I was just kind of wondering why it wasn't included and can you kind of explain that ADA compliance to me? Like, what was, if that happened, what would that look like? Where would that be at?
So first stab, and we'll get Mr. Sturts and Mr. Francisco to help me clean it up. What we recognize is we have historically budgeted some ADA-specific projects. There is an advantage to ensure a consistent investment in ADA compliance, just from a legal perspective, to be able to defend where Norman sits in overall compliance. In every street project we undertake, ADA compliance is built into that for sure. Every curb return we make is gonna be fully ADA compliant, so we have not abandoned the investment in ADA compliance. A lot of it is now just being captured in streets projects. We still invest in ADA accessibility in older facilities to make sure the door pulls are still compliant. And of course, every new structure we build is 100% ADA compliant.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sturts, we were talking about Gray Street two-way real quick, and I know a two-way Main Street is one of the goals council has discussed. The two-way Gray Street project, what was the rough cost of the total conversion?
It was a total about $10 million.
And how much of that did we successfully receive grant funding on?
So that project was an unusual project, and that's why I gotta kind of back that one up. We didn't get the traditional 80-20 on that one. What happened is at the end of the year, after they had allotted the money, we were the next project on the list, and we were offered the remaining money, and we said, yeah, we'll take it. And then we got lucky, and there was some additional funding later that other people hadn't utilized, and they said, would you like some more money? And we said, yes, we would like some more money. I think in the end, we got CRRSA funds. And then we got some CRRSA funds, so we're able to, we kind of tagged a lot of things together to get that one. We got about half the construction cost by the time that we were done. So $5 to $6 million total back in the federal funding on that one.
We do recognize two-way Main Street is a council priority. You know, we'll have 3 lanes going east and only 1 lane going west until a two-way,
4 lanes going east and only 1 lane going
until
west.
that, you're right, 4 lanes going east, 1 west, until that
3 on Main
conversion
Street
takes
going
place.
east, and 1 on Gray Street going east, and
So
only 1 going west is what we'll be with.
what you won't necessarily see is a two-way Main Street project budgeted at $10 million in the upcoming fiscal year. Because we'll have to approach it in similar form and fashion to the Gray Street two-way conversion. We'll get all the engineering and design work done in a fiscal year, and the whole time we're gonna be out hitting that grant.
Well, and
market
just
hard.
important to note too, that Gray Street is a new sidewalks, new lights, there was new water lines, everything was redone. Main Street already has all that. It's all been redone already on Main Street, so adding traffic signals that face the other direction, some of the curb bump outs maybe, other things like that, but it's not the same project as converting Gray Street back to.
So, but we would have to, so right now, if we did the reverse angle parking on one side of the street, we had to reverse all the parking, which just changed the bump outs on every end. And, you know, part of the reason also that Gray Street kept going up in cost is we kept being requested to do more street improvements. So we added, you know, more aesthetics to it at the request of the community and the request of council. So that also helped drive that project up to a little bit higher cost. You are right that to compare apples to apples, it maybe doesn't fit, but there's still a lot that would still have to go into that
The
project.
crossing is, the biggest cost still would be the railroad crossing thing, so. But yeah, a different project as far as, yeah, all the main infrastructure's already been redone on Main Street.
Your priorities are our priorities, and we're all on the same page there.
It might be a interesting thing with only 1 lane going west
Westbound.
and 4 going east, so.
I wanna touch on, Councilmember Blodgett's question real quick on the, projects that were not funded or not included in the capital project budget for 26. There were a lot of different factors as to why these were chosen to just not have additional funds appropriated. They're still high priority projects. They're still, as Jacob said, they're still in the outlying year budgets. But some of these projects had money that hadn't been spent down, and that's the case with the ADA project specifically. And I think that was a factor for most of these projects. And then with the Pago Bridge maintenance, obviously bridge maintenance is still a high priority. But with the new bridge bond, we figured we could really delay new funding. So this is just new funding. It's not freezing these projects where they can't be used. These projects all still had available funding from prior years. Just wanted to point that out.
So why would you ask for more funding, ADA funding, when you haven't executed your current projects in the queue for ADA? And there's already funding that's been, my words, committed for it.
Sometimes with these projects, you can only do certain projects when you've built up so much of a balance. And sometimes you can only apply for certain grants when you have so much for a grant match. And that's the case for some of these projects where they are just kind of building a balance. Sometimes it's waiting on, funding of a particular grant that you're anticipating in the out years and things of that nature. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Like, for example, the ADA, we actually had gone out, we actually got a matching fund grant on that one to do 80/30 first. That was Lindsay Street from 12th to 24th on the east side of town. And we wound up and said we had $300,000. We were able to leverage that $300,000 into $1 million project. So while the funds weren't expended, there was a project, the funds hadn't been expended yet. Because of that, the discussion was that was a program that would be easy to postpone for a year because we already had a project that was coming up for it. So some of the decisions were made because of those type of decisions. The bridge maintenance program, we had things in the works, but we still had some money to expend. So sometimes it is just the processes that we have to go through, especially if we're getting federal money. We're on their timeline, not our timeline. They say you can't, if the money's available in 27, I can't spend it in 26. I have to wait for it to be available.
Maybe this might help my mind. So this ADA compliance at $300,000, they're projects, some projects we're going to call them that have been approved. They're approved. They're authorized. They're approved. You just don't have funding.
In the out years, they're planned for, but you have not appropriated money for them yet. So that's the difference between the current year budget or the budget that you're planning to adopt and the 5-year plan. Those things that are in the plan in the out years may or may not be done. And the priorities change for various reasons that have been discussed here. And so you may or may not, in the budget year, we're now talking about the budget year ending in 27, and you may not appropriate some of these recurring funds that were in the out year plan when you get to the budget. Tell me if that's not clear. Because again, if you look at the table, you'll see in the 5-year plan, there's $100,000 set aside for this project in each of those future 4 years. But hey, we got up here and we just, in the $1 million, it was planned to be spent for bridge maintenance. And hey, we didn't know about this $50 million bridge bond that was gonna pass when we put that in the plan 2 years ago. If you fix a bunch of bridges, or you hire a bunch of contractors to fix a bunch of bridges, we may not be able to spend another $1 million on bridge maintenance or need to. So that's why that priority changed in this fiscal year 26, and that it might be considered differently in fiscal year 27 because it's plugged back in 27. But you remember back when you first started talking about this, and you're talking about this division manager, my priorities over here, and that division manager's priorities over there. Those are real discussions that happen behind the scenes amongst staff. So for example, me, we got a shortage of funds overall. Why would we allocate another $1 million for bridge maintenance when we have, $10 million worth of bridge projects that we're going to be doing this fiscal year funded by bonds? That's a really good way to save some money. And that's what we did in fiscal year 26. And as we go forward in this budget process, I'm gonna be arguing with Scott, saying, it's still a waste of money, you're not gonna be able to do that.
It's not.
That's how it happened.
And you know, in the process, each of our budget managers prepares for battle. And Mr. Francisco will deliver revenue estimates. This is how much new money we expect in the pot for the 26-27 fiscal year. And I appreciate our budget managers fighting for their portion of all of those master plans. And at the end of the day, we do achieve consensus as to the priorities we'll recommend to council. I mean, and it's after, you know, a whole lot of arm wrestling and not much name calling usually. Sometimes it gets down to that, but it's a battle. Fortunately, our budget managers are passionate about the budgets they manage and the projects they're responsible for, and I would expect that of each and every one of them. And at the end of the day, we are able to convince each other what the true priorities really are. And if we can't sell it to ourselves as that's a higher priority than that, how do we expect to communicate that to our council and the public? So it is through that process, you know, kind of the making sausage that it is deliberate, and it is not, there's not a guess to it. It is a very professional, educated recommendation that's unanimously supported by all those budget managers in the final package we'll set before you.
So on the topic of bridge maintenance, we have the bridge maintenance bond program up next on the next slide. Just kind of an overview of this program and what was authorized within the GO bond issue. So we were authorized to issue $50 million in bonds for these bridges. And to date, we've issued 16 million. As you can see on the right-hand side, that's the list of bridges and kind of an update on where those projects are. You can see that 3 of these are already complete with the 60th Avenue Northeast replacement, Windsor Street rehabilitation, and the Main Street rehabilitation. We have East Post Road replacement under construction, and then 3 more under design already.
We're just 2 years in since it was approved.
And so this one's moving really good.
Projects done in 2 years.
We've also secured a $13 million grant for the Porter Avenue project. And just like in the other projects, all those grants that go to supplement those projects just help us push those bond
With
monies
the
further.
absentee Shawnee.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we can potentially, when we get enough of those grants, add in other locations as we go that maybe didn't make the cut on the original vote. So we can definitely look to extend those funds as much as possible with those grant opportunities.
They're looking for more projects to submit for us for next year.
What a great partner they've got.
Yes, very appreciative of the absentee Shawnee tribe and their support of Norman and partnership. And yeah, being able to help get a project like that done, I think allows us to do another project, right? So maybe 2 projects.
Yep, next couple of bridges on the list.
Okay, so moving out of the capital fund and into the public safety sales tax fund, when this was reapproved in 2015, they came with a list of critical capital needs, and all of those except for one have been met. That was the Emergency Communications and Operations Center, the Communications System Update, this is radio system, as well as the fire apparatus replacement. All those have been meet within the PSST fund, except for the reconstruction of Station 5. A lot of those were paid for upfront with some PSST sales tax revenue bonds, which will be paid off in March of 2027. And so once those are paid off, we'll be looking to start the construction of Fire Station 5. Current estimates are around $6.5 million for a new fire station. And so we'll definitely need to look for an opportunity to get that project underway, looking into the next fiscal year or 2, getting the design and the land acquisition for that station. And then the only other update is with the ECOC substantially complete, and there's about $1.4 million in remaining balance in that project to date, with it being substantially complete.
And we could put that towards Fire Station 5
So
or other suggestion.
the perfect opportunity to initiate a conversation, the fire chief, the fire department, they have a good idea about where Fire Station 5 would best serve the public on land owned, we think, by the state of Oklahoma. Which cove is it, Fire Chief?
Clear Bay.
Clear Bay. It's, we don't own it. It's a conversation to be had. With the remaining balance in the construction budget for the Emergency Communications and Operations Center, we have an opportunity. When council discussed a ballot question regarding public safety in April, staff met and said, okay, what do we know that we could present to the public to say, council is interested in building this infrastructure at this location, this many square feet, kind of generically, here's what it looks like. The shelter in that conversation, we have that kind of information that will be available to council when you consider the ordinance to put a thing on the ballot. You'll have the scope to share with the public and square footage, and we know who the operator is gonna be, and we'll know where it's gonna be. When we talked about a reconstruction of Station 1 and or a potential relocation of it, that triggered a bell in the fire chief's mind to understand all the fire station locations that we currently operate out of. There's a circle around that fire station on a map. And if we move Station 1 to Reed and Main Street, it changes all the circles. And we don't know the unintended consequences yet of moving a circle. We know the station is old and tired. It's our oldest, most tired fire station. We don't know all the details yet about how do we address Station 1 and the need to either make it bigger. So those 650 calls last month, the busiest fire station in all of Norman, busier than all the fire stations and more put together. Do we attempt to address that number of calls out of the existing Fire 1 site, or do you build Station 1A out at Reed and Main Street to help lighten the load? We don't have the personnel yet to man it, but these are things that kind of go into that long-range plan. What we would love to do is tap into some of that public safety savings to scope. What are the impacts? How do we rebuild Station 1? Do we take out the admin function next door, build a bigger Station 1 right there, and that's where it all lives? Maybe 2 engine companies responding out of Station 1. And it would also give us a budget to scope a new police department. That one probably has even more question marks than fire. There are lots of options as to where. There are lots of options as to what will we function, how will we function, who will be housed in a new police department. Do we bring in detectives out of the Nick on Lindsay? Do we build it out at Lindsay? Do we build it on Gray Street? Do we build it on Reed and Main? A lot of questions. We don't think we'll have the answers in a sellable package by January when you have to adopt the ordinance for the April ballot. But now we see a budget where we can bring you that scope of work to be available for the next time council says go. Our city clerk has all of our ballot dates for the next couple of calendar years out there in front of us. And we think it is advantageous to bring to the public and to our council the ripe, finished, fully scoped project. We think it's a heck of a lot easier to sell that way. So if that's a thing council's interested in, we don't always find ourselves with, oh, there's some cash we can use to do the scope work. And here it sits.
Councilmember Grant?
Yeah, just to add to that, I did talk to Major Shattuck and Lieutenant McWhorter about a police station, and they said there really wasn't a location identified, and they each had different thoughts, so that led me to believe that a lot more discussion needs to happen. Same for the fire station 1, it sounds like there's a little bit of an unintended domino effect to move it. My question is, of the 1 million-ish, well, 1.5 million-ish, how much does the scoping projects cost? Like, what could we expect? Is it like we get a site selector who's helping us fix? Or
If the
decide?
consultants hear $1.5 million, they will come up with $1 million.
I mean, I feel like when we get designs for things, it's usually in the $100,000 range, but I'm curious.
If you'll let us do a short homework assignment, we'll bring you back that answer as to what we think in preparing for whether it's one consultant to look at public safety or there's a group that all we do is police stations and a group all we do is fire stations, but both our fire admin and police admin understand exactly what questions need to be asked and answered in order to say, okay, scariest thing we could do is go to the public and say, a new police station costs $35 million and it's underscoped, and then we go out to bid and it's $46 million, and now we disappointed everybody. So really important, we have an accurate understanding of what it is to be built and really close to how much it's gonna cost.
And then with the PSST, just thinking back to that matrix study and some of the recommendations about hiring firefighters, for example, I know that particular fund doesn't actually pay for everything. Is that a question that we come back to in the future for a vote and say, hey, are we actually funding X amount in public safety for personnel?
One of council's goals and objectives was the consideration of that public safety sales tax after a number of years operating with that additional revenue stream. We have a really good understanding about what costs it covers. And we recognize where there are additional demands for public safety, including how will we staff the next few fire stations we can build. To build a fire station with a GeoBond question, it's a great fit. We can't staff it with a GeoBond question. That needs sales tax revenue, because we're kind of stuck with sales tax being our only lifeline to a reoccurring revenue stream. The question of when council may consider bringing that PSST question back, we'll bring that to you through the committee process with some estimates. If we're at a half percent now, we know what a 0.5% generates. And we can bring you an example of what an additional 1/8% would generate, what an additional 1/4%, what an additional 0.5% would generate, and what that would cover funding wise. Because we're primarily talking about personnel and the equipment that they operate. So that won't take us 6 months to get to. That's something we could bring you early in 2026 for your consideration, to look at that calendar of possible election dates and when council may consider doing that.
Well, if we're talking about building things in the future, I guess maybe Station 5 might be the one to be thinking about how you're gonna staff it, but I just foresee, if you're passing it, but you don't have all the things built and you need to staff it, I guess you're paying for what you have now a little better than what we have been, but.
And of course, Station 5, the beauty of that particular project out of PSST is we already have the equipment, we already have the bodies. You'll wind up with a vacant building at the current location, and you'll be asked, what would you like to do with that? What are the potential reuses of, and right now there's a Little Axe Community Center, and Mr. Olson has eyes on that building that's stuck to the fire station. So we build a new building, we move the existing bodies and existing equipment to the new location, and council will get to make a determination of how best to utilize that empty building.
Okay, so it won't be bigger than the existing one?
It'll be a one engine company. We'll have our water rescue equipment at the new Station 5, so.
It will have more staffing, it'll be the same,
Right.
same
Okay.
staff.
The equipment bay may look a
Building
little
might
bit
be
different
bigger.
because the equipment's a little different.
Okay, good to know, thank you.
So, yeah, the discussion about increasing the PSST and all that to pay for SROs in every school for, each fire station is 3 shifts of 5 people,
Approximately
15
on
firefighters per station, basically.
Yes.
single company houses, we
Yeah.
have 2 double companies that have more, so.
So that's kind of why I've more focused on a bond to rebuild Fire Station 1 or rebuild a new police station and not necessarily adding new facilities that require new staffing, because we don't know how we might do that yet. If voters will be willing at some point to increase the public safety sales tax, which in some years has broke even and in some years has required general fund subsidy to cover its current expenses. So doubling the current SRO program from 13 to 26 officers would be a pretty tall task to ask of. The PSST fund itself could not afford that. We would have to come up with that in the general fund somewhere, or get voters to approve the PSST increase. And then same thing if we build fire stations 10 and 11 and 13 in the next 20 years, and you're 15 firefighters per station at $1.5 million per station for staffing. That's a lot. So yeah, why I've been kind of focusing on, Fire Station 1 is old and undersized. Other fire stations need attention, we know. The police department itself is in need of attention. And so for me, what I'd like to see is before we ask voters to build a new Fire Station 1, and I'm not set on it being moved somewhere, if it's reconstructed in its current location or where the admin building is next door, I think that's great. But before we ask voters to do that, I do want to have like a solid Fire Station 5, the land is purchased, or we have a deal on getting ready for it. We've got design for it underway, so we can at least say, because they're going to say, well, I voted for Fire Station 5 10 years ago. It hasn't been built yet. And we can say, yeah, but we've done everything else in the PSST that we promised. And we've had to pay off the radio system and pay off the emergency operations system before we can do it. So we can explain all that, but still, we're going to get that question. And if we can say, well, we got the land, we got the design, and we're paying off the other stuff, and we're ready to go. And this is why you should support funding for rebuilding Fire Station 1. And so, having the public safety bond with police and fire on there in April was just an idea for us to all consider, that are needs that are out there. But I didn't just want us to throw that out there as a bond and not have, just vote for a police department. We don't know where it'll be, and we don't know how much it costs yet. Or just vote for Fire Station 1 rebuild. We don't know where it's going to be or how much it'll cost yet, but just vote for it. And like you said, with the shelter, we think we'll know where it'll be. Should know how much it'll cost, what it'll look like. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that whatever we ask voters for, that it's not vague when it comes to that, because I think voters would be willing to support a police department and a fire station rebuild if they know where it's at and how much it'll cost. So if that can't be ready by January, as you're saying, then that looks like we might be just considering a shelter bond proposal in April. So I guess that might be another discussion we have over the next month or so.
Yeah, and we'll be preparing those ordinances.
The consensus of council is to move forward though with using some of that savings from the ECOC to both acquire land and or design Fire Station 5 so that it can be moving forward.
Yes, I would prefer that we use that balance to try to get the location locked down with the state at Clear Bay or whatever, and get some preliminary design done, or all of it, whatever. And then whatever's left from that
Scope.
I'm okay with using for police department, Fire Station 1 study.
Looks like we have consensus. We see nods, so we will proceed down that path. More information will come to council for your action and approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next one, we'll move forward.
So moving on to Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund. Just kind of like with the PSST, a lot of the big ticket items in the Norman Forward package are substantially complete with the Young Family Athletic Center, the Adult Wellness and Education Center. A lot of those are really on the final steps of those projects. And so kind of looking forward at the remaining projects, we have the Saxon Park project, which is underway. Construction is going to begin soon. The allocation of Norman Forward for that project is $2 million. There's also the road portion connecting 36th to Technology Place. And the Norman Forward Fund, about $180,000 of the portion of that road that's connected to the park is going to come from the Norman Forward Fund, the traffic improvements project allocation within the Norman Forward program, as well as the rest of that coming from the capital fund. Currently about $1.3 million is budgeted in the capital fund for the remainder of that to connect to Technology Place. I think they're doing it in-house to try and find some savings in that project as well. There's also the Canadian River Park. There's the new park projects within the neighborhoods in Norman Forward, as well as improvements to existing neighborhood parks. And then some remaining traffic improvements and trail projects within Norman Forward as well.
Councilor Grant?
With the Canadian River Park Did we buy land or are we about to buy land for that?
We're still, we're in negotiation,
Okay.
which has been going on for about a decade, so,
Yeah,
so we're kind of in the same spot where we've been, but we've recently, the idea was to work with the Bob Moore family, it's Bob Moore old estate, that's down there when the original Norm Ford came out. So we've recently started talking with a representative from that family again, and we have hopes that something will move, forward quickly.
And other properties.
New hopes.
along the
Like,
river
yeah.
that might be
At the
available.
end of this year or the start of next year?
Current
Talking about
fiscal year.
or,
Sure.
I don't know, they don't, you don't want me to start guessing about how quick that's moving. It's kind of in somebody else's, we made a deal with not, with a verbal agreement with the family without having anything on paper, so we're kind of at their mercy, but hopefully, that moves forward. If not, we do have contingency plans to maybe look at other property along the river if we need to.
Yeah, I got a question about it, so that's why I was inquiring about the status.
It's a high priority for us. We'd like to see all these Norm Ford projects finished.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then just another recent thing that's happened in the Norman Forward Fund, we recently purchased, the city agreed to purchase the Griffin property for $3.3 million. I'm using the remainder of the lease allocation that was set aside to lease that property, as well as a portion from the capital fund from some project savings that were transferred into that to get that complete to purchase that property and secure it for the city as well. And-
So in that world of Norman Forward related to the soccer complex and the Adult Wellness and Education Center, our ability to keep more projects on the list than we have money for. Over time, we wound up acquiring the soccer park for about $3.8 million when originally the budget, we thought it was gonna cost us $10 million.
Yeah.
We didn't wind up spending the $10 million on the soccer park. We moved the money, cause money's pretty fungible as long as it's in the Norman Forward bucket, and build the Adult Wellness and Education Center. A few years later, the ability to acquire that soccer park after we already built it presented itself. And darn it, sometimes things work out for the best, and here is an excellent example. We had a project on the Norman Forward list for a senior center, and the budget originally was zero. We didn't have any money, we didn't know how we were gonna pay for it, but we kept it on the list, kept working, and now you delivered both your soccer park that you now own and a really cool adult
So
wellness
it
and
would be an
education center.
eligible project for Norman Forward funds, and it got $7 million from. But if we hadn't included it in the list,
Could not.
it couldn't have received that $7 million, and it would probably still not be done. So I just say that.
So just moving on to the last major slide here. We just have a list of some of the upcoming challenges and impacts to keep in mind, not just in this budget cycle, but going forward as well. We have the status of the Rock Creek Entertainment District and the potential impact that could have on the capital budget, as well as the OTA's Access Oklahoma Turnpike project. We have the pending litigation with the Central Library mold remediation and the repairs to get that functioning as a library. Again, this is going to remain a high priority. With the public safety study and the recommendations that came with that, we kind of touched on it a little bit already, but we're going to look to replace the police department's headquarters as well as Station 1, as well as Stations 10 and 11, and just keeping in mind that when you add a new station, we're going to look at how do we pay for the bodies to go in those stations.
Yeah.
And also those recommendations, we have the North Base Master Plan. There's a lot of components of the fire department transit fleet at North Base. Just how do we get those started? Do we fit those into the capital plan as well? Recently,
I wouldn't plan to ask voters to fund the construction of Fire Station 10 and 11 until, like I was saying, until we know if voters would be willing to fund the staffing of those stations. I know that 8 and 9 weren't built with bonds, or they were built through PSST approval, but were they revenue bond financed, or how was 8 and 9 done?
They were pay as you go.
Okay, so they were paid by the PSST tax itself,
Yes.
not a bond.
Yes.
And then staffed through the PSST also. So that would be a question for us to think about. Do we want to build and staff Fire Station 10 and 11 with a proposed increase? Or all to SROs, or all to whatever else comes up, so.
Big poker hand.
Okay. And we also have the area and infrastructure master plans. We have all the plan updates for parks, wastewater, all those, and how they factor into what projects we want to do as we look forward into the capital budget plan and implementation. With the Center City Tax Increment Finance District, there's just been some discussion about a parking structure within that target area, as well as some discussion around Campus Corner and how that fits into that area as well. On the Griffin Hospital campus, there's been a recent update with the Department of Mental Health purchasing property at Southwest 59th and Penn to use for their new location, and kind of how that fits into the timeline with the development plan that has recently been discussed with council, as well as the chapel on that property being kind of the anchor for that development. It's something we haven't been into yet with our engineers to see if it's able to be saved. That's something that within the capital fund would look to use funds to get in there and
Yeah,
see what we can do with that property.
I do
as well.
plan for in committee, one of them for council to dive a bit deeper into the details of the updated conceptual master plan and kind of flesh out more of the details and expectations that we have for what we have in mind for all of that and how it all work. And
So
funding
part of
and all that.
the value of Norman's investment in transparency, council went through that master plan exercise. Those documents are available to the public. That news story about the Department of Mental Health's authorization to purchase the SSM facility in OKC, we got a phone call the day after that news story broke from a development group that said, "We found your master plan online. We'd like to talk to you about how we might participate in the development of that property." So we were prepared, and now the phone's ringing, and there are opportunities to, the city of Normal, we don't have the ability to write a check for all that property. It'll be a big nut, and then there's a bunch of development costs incurred to demo and, get rid of asbestos and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, the private sector is far more capable of implementing council's master plan than city staff. And because of the homework you did, it's now receiving attention from the development community, even outside of Oklahoma, which is fascinating to me. But eyes are on Norman, and we'll keep you posted as that interest continues to evolve. We'll direct them that their real property acquisition is negotiation between them and the State Department of Mental Health. But you'll have to plat it and zone it, and obviously if council said, if you do it that way, odds are really, really good, you're gonna get approval.
That's why I want us to get into more of the details about the conceptual plan and kind of get some more stuff, more of it solidified as far as what we want to see happen there, whether there's a TIF or not, and what's the name of the neighborhood, all that stuff. Councilmember Grant?
Yes, just to echo that, I really would like to get those details nailed down, especially the potential for a TIF, or even pursuing, if it hasn't evaporated, economic development incentive money through HUD. I feel that is an area of opportunity, and funds like that can pay for maybe some below market rate housing or something else.
Absolutely, because it meant that opportunity zone designation, TIF eligible, doors open.
And then we also have stormwater infrastructure. It's something that we do budget for a little over $2 million a year in the capital fund. That's just an issue that we have so many needs that we just can't afford within the capital fund to keep up with those needs. And so just want to always keep that on the radar, that if we can find opportunities to catch up with that. We have the permanent homeless shelter facility.
I would note too, the stormwater master plan from 2011 recommended a $6.5 million a year program for stormwater.
Plus the bond.
And so we're 15 years
It
later.
was 50 million at
less
the
than 3
time.
million.
We've done some of those projects now.
Yeah, we piecemeal bond projects, piecemealing them, putting stormwater together with them, making one of the biggest one, the biggest one that was in the stormwater master plan was McGee and Lindsay. That was fixed with the Lindsay Street bond project. And then one of the other bigger ones will be fixed at Lindsay and Elm Street, will be fixed with the Lindsay Street road project, so.
A huge one is the Imhoff
Yeah.
that's under construction now, and that's,
Yeah. So staff's been able to piecemeal stuff together and we've been able to get by, but we're vastly underfunding stormwater management for a city this size. And so stormwater utility, you know, we've attempted it twice before. It's been a few years now. And that's something that's always gonna be out there that we're gonna need to think about. When is ever gonna be a good time to ask voters to approve something like that? But it's not ever gonna go away. Councilman Grant?
I would just add that stormwater and addressing it holistically will improve our ability to do infill. And without investing in that, it's gonna be a lot harder.
So on the permanent homeless shelter facility, as it was mentioned, there's gonna be some discussions very soon about purchasing a property for that, and then discussions about how do we build that facility as well.
And on the bond part, Anthony, do you remember the animal shelter? That was a standalone bond just for that, and
How
$2 or
much
$3
was-
million.
I wanted to say 3.5.
3 million. How long did that take to pay off? So once voters approved
I
it,
believe that was a 10-year bond.
10-year, and then once it paid off, we didn't renew it for anything, I don't think, so
No.
just went away.
And council, just to kind of keep in your back pocket, when GeoBond questions are being formulated, Mr. Francisco takes a peek at the impact on a homeowner based on assessed value. And at a home valued at $400,000 in Norman, the impact of an $8 million GeoBond question is about $13.50 a year. And we try to prepare that information, whether your house is worth 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, or 400,000, so everybody can kind of gauge what the impact will be. And then we provide that information to the community during our educational campaign when we go out and have that
Well,
conversation.
in a shelter, I can't imagine, I mean, like we said, we're not trying to build just like a palace or anything. I can't imagine it being more expensive than a fire station, right?
Shouldn't be, it'll be bigger and built for a different occupancy. But yeah, I wouldn't anticipate more.
Like less than 5 million.
And based on what was
We did the
built,
work that Darryl was talking about based on an $8 million assumption.
and that was kind of generically based on what was recently built by City Care in Oklahoma City. So it would include land acquisition cost, all the design, sewer, water, curb gutter, sidewalk, all
If we
of
already
that.
have the land, then you wouldn't have to include that, right?
No, we wouldn't.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, Mr. Francisco, please correct me, if the voters approved 8 million and the project costs 6.9 million, we would issue $6.9 million worth of bonds.
Well, we would probably issue $8 million worth of bonds and then repay about 1.5 million upfront. You know, it's in the sinking fund is what it's called. You would defeat some of the bonds.
So we wouldn't hold the taxpayers to more than what the project actually
We think
cost.
by,
And in discussions with the potential voters, again, you know, Darryl talked about the $400,000 home, and we do an assumption for that. But just remember that there's a whole lot more people that have $200,000 homes than $400,000 homes. I would suspect that you would want to do your marketing based on the $200,000 home.
Yeah.
And there it's like, you know, 30 cents a month, you know, $5 a year.
and by January, you think we will have that number?
Mr. Olson has kind of been leading our internal charge for the scope of that shelter effort.
We started the process for seeking out scope today, and hopefully we'll have that by the end of next month.
Just the same thing, I just wanna be real specific about what we're asking voters for.
And it
We'll,
is,
we'll have a dollar figure, for sure.
and a site plan, and
Yeah.
that scope, it is being done in conjunction with the folks at City Care. We wanna make sure that it's not city staff designing a shelter that somebody else is gonna operate. It needs to meet the needs identified by City Care. And they've been doing this for a while now and have existing facilities up in operation, so.
We'll have a site
confidence is
plan,
high.
conceptual drawings of what it looks like. We'll have pictures of what the building will potentially look like, site plan, and a full estimate of costs that includes infrastructure around the property.
Okay.
You're going to consider a land purchase next meeting.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those questions that would be outstanding for Fire Station 1 or certainly for 10 or 11 are answered for this potential homeless facility, so.
Yeah.
So you have a pretty tied down package to present to the voters.
That's what I want to make sure we do with anything we ask voters for, is be as detailed as we can. Okay.
Then we have the fleet vehicle replacement. It's just something that in the recent years, we've been able to use Seizures and Restitutions Fund, general fund surplus to tackle some of that issue. But that's always something that as vehicle costs go up, and revenues and the allocation for capital outlay kind of stays the same. We're just not able to get as many cars as we have in the past. I went and looked in 2022, I think it was like $62,000 for a police car, and now it's like over $80,000 in 26 in just that short amount of time. And so that's something that we want to keep on the radar as well. And kind of tying into that, just continued inflation and project costs like we talked about, and just trying to keep those increases in mind. We also have the street maintenance bond election in April, as we've talked about. There's been some recent discussion around the Kids Space Community Park and rebuilding that facility to get it up to modern ADA standards, as well as the possibility of a Kids Space Park at University North Park.
Are there TIF funds, University North Park, existing TIF?
Yes, there are. There's about $400,000 in the University of North Park TIF fund for the incentive for the lifestyle center that can only be used in that area.
Right, and we could, in that, the
And that
idea
could be
about
used
where
for that
kid-
project.
University of North Park Kids Space would be in the lifestyle center.
Yes,
And so we could use those funds to build the playground.
yes. The idea is that, I know that Mayor Holman and Councilmember Peacock were kind of distressed about the amount of parking lots in the plan in the lifestyle center. So instead of paving one of those parking lots, you would put a playground in it.
So basically between Main Event and Marnell and Hobby Lobby, there's a big currently empty lot that would otherwise be just a massive parking lot. And the idea about putting a kids space playground up there, since Legacy Park does not have a playground, be pretty neat, I think. And if we can use TIF funds and kids space at Reese Park replacement, Jason, we're 300.
600.
We're saying 600 if we have them do it, or what, 3 or 4 if we do it?
So at Reese Park, the materials just for the playground itself, and if we do a community build, which means we're not hiring a contractor to erect a playground, it's about 600,000. So if you same size playground or infrastructure to go along with that, new sidewalks, fencing to keep the kids inside the playground structure, lighting, you're probably talking about somewhere around $1 million.
Okay. So maybe 400,000 in university, maybe a smaller one at university.
It would be way smaller.
Okay.
And so just to give you an idea, 3 years ago, when we put the playground out at Andrews Park, it was 440,000.
Not to say if it wasn't council's desire to have the design expandable in the future, and if it's a big hit and council says in the next couple of capital budgets, we wanna add a couple of more functions to it, as long as we know that up front, we can design it to be added on to.
Councilman Green.
So was there a fundraising component to the Reeves Kids Space in the first go round?
In 1999, yes. Originally, there was a fundraising portion before that, and then it was a community build. And I don't have a whole lot of information about that. I know it was considerably cheaper.
I just wanted to
But-
confirm that there was a
Community
part
foundation.
that came from outside funding. Just thinking about University of North Park, I don't know how Main Event will feel, but I imagine Hobby Lobby or Merdell might be approachable for some funding if you wanted to.
And they do have a
Playground.
business improvement district.
Oh,
Yeah.
they renewed it?
I don't know if they've renewed it yet, it is anticipated,
Okay.
so.
So it would be the developer of that project that we would have to approach, not any of the businesses, I would think.
Oh, okay, so then,
Which
yeah,
is Lincoln Rainier, or Rain, they're the owner.
There's that call out.
so a portion could be from the UMP TIF, and then the other portion might be from the private side of the equation.
Naming rights are a possibility.
That would be better than a parking lot, I'll just say.
And then we just have some recent discussion on parking structures. You guys in Finance Committee talked about capturing some of that revenue, putting in a trust to look at developing some parking structures, targeting Campus Corner and downtown as well. And the last thing we've already talked about a little bit is Fire Station 5 and just trying to look at the land acquisition and design in this upcoming fiscal years.
I just got a
Councilor
question
Bruce,
on
yeah.
the fire station. The one, the area down south, on 77 past 9. What fire station is in, the number that
Would
you
be
guys?
10.
10?
Yeah.
And then 5 is, the one,
Little Axe,
way out there.
Which is hardly a fire station, it's like a annex of a shed,
Garage.
yeah, garage.
lean-to. The new one will look much different than the old Fire Station 5, no
So,
doubt.
yeah, it was to move Fire Station 5 a mile or so further west. So it would cover more of an area because it's right up on the city limit line basically now. And then have the turnpike alignment impacted where it would go. And then Fire Station 10 being in southeast Norman, and Fire Station 11 being in northeast. Somewhere like 36th in Tecumseh, and then the other one being 36th in Cedar Lane area. So, and then the other one, the Fire Station 12 was like out by north of the lake or in that area, north of Twin Bridges and all that stuff. Somewhere. Anything else about the capital budget? Any other questions or comments?